Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another Contact.ed webinar. Today we have with us Shweta Nair, who's the head of news stories and SEO at Z5. She has over 17 years of experience in content creation and strategy spanning across print and online journalism, branded solutions, marketing, e-commerce, and OTT. She will be talking to us today about storytelling to stay relevant in the times of COVID-19. We all know that stories are a vital part of our daily communication, but at present, stories hold meaning beyond an entertainment value. Storytelling is a strong business acumen, and when implemented efficiently, it can boost a business in a number of ways. Today's webinar will cover a few key discussion points like using content to engage consumers, creating engaging content and story formats, and delivering best-in-class brand solutions to brands through engaging means. Shweta is going to walk us through her presentation, and then we'll open the floor to questions. So please feel free to send us your questions even during the presentation. Welcome, Shweta, and over to you.
I am actually going to talk about content creation in the time of COVID. These are really strange times that we live in. And there's locusts in the sky, there's corona on the ground, forest fires, earthquakes, cyclones approaching from the sea, and Arogya Setu app telling us, you're fine. That's the irony of it all. The point is that it's a time where we are all living out the same story. Picture this: if you go to a restaurant or a bar, and in the same bar you are meeting with your boss at the table, and an hour later you're actually meeting with your parents at the same table. Cut to another hour, and you're actually having a date with your significant other. That's the kind of life we are currently living in. Through our incessant Zoom calls, Google Meets. It's bye office desk, hello kitchen table. So Zoom fatigue is a whole new psychological problem, and I hope I don't contribute to it today. And that said, we will move on to the reason why I'm here today. I'm going to first start talking about Z5 News, not just because I hate news, but basically because there is a story here that I need to tell you. Z5 News, has had a great exponential growth during this entire pandemic period. As you know, Z5 is India's entertainment super app, and news vertical is one of a very integral part of it. We created tailored news coverage for COVID-19, and it saw massive 16 million viewers tuning in per month to catch the accurate and real-time updates on the pandemic situation across the months of March, April, May. Now, we saw 178% growth in video views, and we saw a 24% increase in average watch time. We saw 166% growth in news consumption on connected devices and 27% increase in views per user. Why am I talking to you about this? Because, it's not about just, creating or, curating this content. We took a narrative approach to showcase this news, right? We took the entire campaign that we went to users with was be calm, stay informed. The idea of the thing, the growth didn't just happen because of the increase in news consumption overall. Obviously, that contributed to it. It was fueled by the way we chose to approach the user. Rather than create more panic, we decided that we wanted to spread necessary and important information for increasing awareness, which would help them stay safe and healthy. We chose a positive take over what most of the news portals were centered on: panic and negativity. We did not bombard consumers with notifications about death tolls and mounting numbers of cases. We believe that citizens are in uncharted territory, and serving them accurate information, how to stay safe, rather than just update cases, deaths, is the need of the hour. Now, the thing is that, as a news aggregator, it's very easy to just put out content that is already there. We have 50 plus total news channels, on Z5, and we have content across 12 languages. But what we did is we actually onboarded 20 news channels during this lockdown period, of which TV Today Network, TV9 Network, Sam TV, India TV were among the news channels that we onboarded. But the point was that we curated this content in such a way that we wanted to go to people with the local news, the news that is relevant to them. So we took vital local information like health advisories, new government notifications, new cases in the area, essential supplies and treatment that they would need to know, in this time of pandemic. Language updates is something that we really focused on in terms of, the notifications that we sent out. We tailor-made region-specific updates across the 12 languages. We also curated content from doctors, epidemiologists, and experts based on the kind of FAQs that consumers had, and that really helped us set ourselves apart. Now, the reason why I spoke about that is that being an aggregator, it was really easy for us to actually just put out the content that came to us, but we took a stand, and that is the reason why all brands need to get creative with your storytelling when the world is on pause, which is the need of the hour right now. There's no time like now to find a new way to communicate and stay relevant. Brands and organizations are a lot like people because they are built and run by people. And just as with work from home, wherein people are flocking online to share stories about their new lives, their workstations, their cup of Dalgona coffee that they have freshly brewed, brands need to evaluate their own COVID 19 stories. How have they been affected? What are they doing to respond? Or how can they help or add value to a consumer in the lockdown? The stories brands tell during the pandemic will inevitably outlive the virus. Brands need to tell stories that honor the present moment while also considering how these stories will inform people's perception of their organization in a post pandemic world. See, while you communicate as a brand during this time, there are so many brands communicating things. It doesn't mean that every consumer will, remember everything you say, but they will remember how they feel, basis what you have put out. So it's very, very important to know and really understand what you want to communicate to the users. So, in case you aren't, yet convinced about investing in storytelling, I'll give you three reasons why brands should invest in storytelling right now more than ever. Let's first address the fact that people are on their phones, their tablets, their laptops all the time nowadays. While cooped up in quarantine and working from home, millions have turned to digital devices for everything from news to entertainment. The weekly screen time reports for phones are through the roof. Ask me about it. I'm on the phone all the day, all late to late in the night. App usage is also seeing a surge as people browse social as well as streaming apps and Facebook, Instagram, Netflix, Z5, and others for hours on end. So, what does this have to do with your brand's content production? Like, what does it have to do with storytelling? Well, to put it frankly, you've got an audience of bored, technology addicted customers at your fingertips. And the three reasons why you need to invest in storytelling is because A, obviously the content consumption is greater than ever right now, which means that the demand is massive. There is a lot more time at hand for people. And there's also a lot of content creators who are creating a lot more content. Due to reduced spends on advertising, you can expect lower competition. Bid costs are lower on platforms like Facebook and Google, and there's a much higher ROI compared to the pre-pandemic times. So, lower cost of advertising is something that should definitely, urge you to create more content. But more important than anything else is consistent communication. To stay relevant, brands need to consistently create content that is affine to their audience. So that brings me to my next point, which is content marketing during COVID 19, how to shift your strategy. But before we go into what type of content you should be used to engage with consumers, let's take a step back and define what's your goal, from content marketing. You may be a retail business trying to bridge the gap and educate your customers about your online offerings, or you may be a real estate business that wants to drive long term trust in your brand. Whichever bucket you are in, you need to understand what you're trying to achieve. The biggest mistake you can do right now is jump right in without a clear goal. So, what's your goal from content marketing right now? Do you want to support and help your customers through these testing times? Do you want to build long-term trust? Are you wanting to educate the customer, about your industry? Do you want to engage customers in creative ways, or do you want to just entertain customers like Z5 so they can have a great time? See, depending on your business, you may have a different framework to identify these goals. The only recommendation is to have them before you decide what kind of content strategy you want to take up. The next thing I would like to talk to you about is, the question that I've been asked a couple of times is how much can you deviate from your pre-COVID content marketing plans? So I have a very simple answer to this. I mean, while it's not easy to answer this question, the best way to go about it is by following what I call the estimation elimination strategy. Essentially, you lay down your pre-COVID plan and estimate what you invest, what you need to invest and create and do given the current. You might have lesser budgets right now. You may not be able to go out and shoot. There are still places where it's not opened up yet. ZIFA has already started shooting in Kerala and Karnataka because there are certain areas that have opened up and some regions of Maharashtra, but that's not the case for every brand. So you need to take all of these external conditions, and other conditions into account before you take a call. Next, you need to eliminate anything that doesn't align with your business goal. See, currently your business goal needs to be very, very focused because A, you don't have the kind of spends you may have had before. B, the attention span still remains, short of a consumer. There's a lot going on. You want to be very clear and very concise on what you want to communicate, and you want to be relevant to them right now. Bottom line is you will likely need to invest your content budget in addressing the current needs of your audience, no matter how painful it might be to spend time reworking your strategy. I'm going to move on to storytelling principles that I think would help you from point of view of following during the COVID-19. The idea is basically you need to be sensitive, and any haphazard or tangential connection will be perceived as being tone deaf and tasteless for a brand. So you need to follow the thread of the moment. Like COVID-19 is the thread of all stories for the immediate and near term and long term future. So keep a thread of it woven through your story for now. It doesn't mean that it needs to be the main focus of your story. While it doesn't need to be at the center of your story, any reference to it should have a clear and immediate connection. Now is the time for compassion and sincerity. Long-term planning offers the opportunity to prepare for positive stories of companies getting back to businesses, citizens once again fully employed, children in school facilities. What I'd like to also, step back and talk to you about is, brands have gone through like 3 phases of interacting with their users. In the beginning, when things sort of started out in March, we were in the awareness phase where brands were talking about awareness along to their users, and we were trying to talk to them and make them understand about safety, about we were introducing the idea of social distancing, about wearing masks, about using sanitizers. Then we moved on to the second phase, which was wherein we said that we are in this together and we can get through this. We are now in the third phase of interaction with users when we are saying that this is the new normal. So you need to take those things into consideration. One of the things that we did for news is that we actually, like I said earlier, for ZFi News, we took the entire, first step to, dealing with this crisis is awareness. So our entire communication was be calm, stay informed. And that's how we actually communicated going forward with the consumer. So being part of the conversation, acknowledging that COVID-19 is here, and it will likely dominate headlines, and the effects of the virus will continue to be a major theme throughout, is something that we need to acknowledge and we need to build content around. The next principle that I would like you to actually look at, and this is very important because we have a lot of anxiety and negativity, and I'm sure that everyone here has gone through the many insights and reports that Google and Kantar and everyone has put out about the high anxiety levels, the negativity that audiences are currently going through. So I would definitely want us to focus on the good, look for glimmers of hope in all of this. We should actively look to tell positive, heartwarming stories to provide a bit of hope and feel good factor to the consumers. In normal times, these type of content and stories would easily get looked over. Today, there's a great opportunity for us to be had here. And the reason why I say this is that it gives them a break from the constant bombardment of what do you say, your death tolls and your updates that which aren't really as positive as they ideally should be. So we on especially in Z5 News, we make it a point to actually curate a lot of good news coming in through the world, where whether it is a Manipur village making 80 quarantine huts for the migrant workers, or whether it is Mumbai's air quality getting better. The idea is bring out the stories that will make people smile, that will make give them hope. And that's why I want to also talk about what IKEA did. So IKEA takes this entire idea of looking for good or finding the good in things forward in their I Stay Home campaign. The campaign encouraged people to see their homes from a new perspective, and challenge them to view it as a place where new experiences can be enjoyed together. And this is a great example of actually using this during this time, creating a communication that is a lot more positive in its outcome. Going to my next point, let your brand's core values lead rather than focusing on a product or service. And let your brand's core values and belief system lead the activation and the resulting story. Now is the time to be sensitive and thoughtful. Like the news cycle, this too shall pass. Now is the time to lay the groundwork, right? Your work will be viewed not only as being on brand and authentic, but also caring and in touch with what customers are really looking for. So what you do matters as much as what you say, which means basically, like for example, I would like to take the example of GE here. They don't just put out content for the sake of it. They have they actually do a lot of things. They are working in the space of helping healthcare workers. They're working to actually in the creation of or ventilators, and they have this entire GE reports blog, which I would urge everyone here to look at, which is a great example of content marketing, because there they not only tell stories about how their brand is taking their core value forward, they also talk about bring out stories of the employees going through the pandemic. For example, if you look at this image, there's this story is about this field technician who traveled 5,000 miles so that he could actually get to one of their critical what do you say, industrial units where he had to do maintenance, and that his story has been recorded there, so that they could show how he had to deal with it, crossing borders through the entire pandemic. And these kind of stories bring out the entire human aspect of the brand, and also show that there is a lot more to the brand than just putting out communication for the sake of it. I would also now go to another example of a brand showing really good brand score values. For those who have not joined in from Bombay, NCPA is a national it's the National Center for Performing Arts in Mumbai. It's an institution that greatly relies on large gatherings and events. It specifically has operas and concerts and music events and performances. And what it has done is during the pandemic, it has begun showing performances online. It has democratized its content, and ultimately it's bringing its concerts and performances to a much wider audience than it had before the pandemic. Groups that might otherwise have limited access to or interest in the NCPA have gotten a taste of what it's like to attend the opera. The NCPA's decision to share widely and freely with the viewers is an important turning point in the organization's, institutional narrative. They're building a narrative with this, right? Opening it out to the world. They're illustrating how it shows up, new and unexpected way to reach out to audiences. This decision will help, NCPA sustain the interests of loyalists and also foster a new generation of supporters. They're showing, as you can see, they are showing live performance that are recorded by Zakir Hussain, or even Tom Hiddleston's new play. All of this for free on their site. The next point that I would like to talk to you about is, that again, this is something that has come out through many consumption pattern reports that have emerged through the COVID-19, where we know that users are undergoing a lot of stress. Our consumers are looking for distraction. So as a brand, you can either view the fact that there's a large population of anxious, bored consumers as an intimidation factor or as an opportunity to provide people with the distraction they need to manage their concerns. They need to manage their concerns. So, everywhere you turn, people are talking about the pandemic and its repercussions. I mean, that while that is an angle you can take and help them, but you can also produce messaging and content that isn't, anxiety inducing, right? So take a look at what we've done with the recent Z5 original, Dhoom Ketu. Why is it so popular? It's not that it's beneficial to people's life. It's because it's downright distracting. It's a story of a struggling writer who has come to Bombay and who has 30 days to write, and before he's whisked off back to where he came from. So this is now become one of the highest watched original films on the platform. People are desperate for entertainment and interesting content during a time when they're practically on house arrest, right? What can your company do or your brand do to give people a little distraction right now? If you're a skincare company, can you create video blogs or TikTok videos about tips for taking care of yourself while you're at home? Are you a toy business? Can you publish posts on innovative ways for keeping kids entertained? No matter what kind of brand you are part of, there are strategies to give people distraction, and that is something that we should definitely consider doing. That brings me to my next to take this point further. I also want to illustrate that Z5 Stories, which is also another section that I head, we also took this entire route of distraction of giving people content that they would engage with more. We took the So when you saw that Be Calm, Stay Informed was our news campaign for our overall Z5 platform, we did the Be Calm, Be Entertained. We took that narrative. Yeah. Z5 Stories vertical has subdomains, which is a content marketing and native solutions destination that helps create discovery of our TV shows, movies, original series, and films we have on Z5. What we do on this platform is basically we create a lot of article content and interactive content that's talking about everything that is there on all our linear channel. Whether it's ZTV and TV, Z Marathi. What we did during this point is we actually saw great growth in terms of referral video views and what do you say, page views on the platform, because we created a lot of nostalgia content. We created content around evergreen shows to keep the users engaged. So we actually started trending for content that Z is known for, which is like Hum Panch or Hasrate or Z Horror Show. And we also did a lot of best of comedy shows and films and series to provide that much needed comic relief. Then the third thing that we did was we created a lot of character-led content. Articles and interviews were done around what these characters would do in the time of COVID. And when I say characters, these are the TV show content. So the reason why I talk about this is that because while the TV shows stopped, there was no shows that we could show. Right? They all went on lockdown mode. We actually reinvented the entire game by creating this evergreen content or keeping people engaged with nostalgia led or comic relief led or content, and especially with character led content because they identified with characters of these television shows. The next point that I would like to also talk about is basically it's important as a definitely important as a brand to take a position. Sometimes taking no position is worse than taking a bad position. But the absence of commentary on COVID-19 could lead people to think your brand is tone deaf or is simply doesn't care, right? So take a look at what position you are taking. How can it play a role in your content production? Ignoring COVID-19 or any other topical event and its repercussions isn't an option. It's time to speak up in a way that works for your brand. One of the world's most iconic and impactful brands, Nike, has taken a bold step, so far with a new ad. If it instead of tiptoeing around the whole subject, you must know about the George Floyd protests. So instead of tiptoeing around the whole subject, the 60-second ad For once, don't do it. Puts the scourge of racism squarely in the spotlight with simple, powerful statements. Don't pretend there's not a problem in America. Apple has taken a similar stance, and if you open the Apple Music app, you'll see the message of support. There was a lot of brands joined into this conversation where they actually did a blackout Tuesday, and there was a collective voice that they generated. So what I'm trying to say is that as a brand, whichever brand you are, you need to take a stand and let people know, because that's how they will connect with you. Now, moving on to the types of content formats in the new world order. Now, live video. As people stay indoors, and live video has become bigger and stronger than ever before. As people stay indoors amid the coronavirus induced lockdown, Z Live collaborated with Z5 to offer its content under Supermoon, live to home, and it curated specifically, for Z5 subscribers, daily curated content on entertainment, fitness, food, and brought celebrity creators together on Z5 like Mandira Bedi, Prashant Sawant, Brinda Mehta, Kunal Kapoor, Anu Kapoor. We saw a lot of engagement and returning users go up with this, with this activation. The idea is that live video, if you have not already used it, it is one of the uh, biggest things that you should try right now. From musicians to comedians, live video has exploded as people quarantine all over the world. You need to go. So the idea is you go live at a specific time, let's say around 7 p.m. On dedicated days to share exclusive deals, tips, sneak peeks, and interviews with people who have tuned in. You invite talent for a shared live where they talk about their experience. You create exclusive live events with celebrities and influencers. And this is a great way to continue engaging with them on a platform, which otherwise wouldn't have got them together. The other thing that we have seen a lot of brands doing now, and which really helps, is virtual happy hours. A lot of brands are hosting virtual happy hours for their users, employees. There are fitness and cooking classes on Zoom, even virtual tours of the world. Launches, reveals, awards are all happening online and bringing the entertainment to a screen near you. The opportunity to come together virtually is a trend worth exploring. Z5's Hi-Fi, is India's first and largest ever OTT awards. It's now held exclusively online and acknowledges the most consumed content across various categories. Also, since the lockdown, Z5 also hosts the content lineup calendar reveal for the month through a live webinar with the stars, where we have users also interact with them. So it's been a very engaging, format for us. Then the third thing that I would definitely ask you all to consider is creative crowdsourcing. Creative crowdsourcing is the new collaboration, meaningful collabs that will help connect brands and people and also bring the purpose of brand to life. Is the best way to create the right narrative right now. And the idea is, you can increase awareness and reach as well as create compelling content. Right now, you don't have the resources. You have a lot of restrictions in place. So, you need to ink meaningful collaborations, create brand assets and properties, or simply inspire users in the time of crisis. So, and an Instagram live concert, a mindfulness webinar that helps users keep calm and carry on, or a chef that gives quick recipes to conjure up food out of leftovers at home, are all content format possibilities that have prominently cropped up amidst the ongoing lockdown in the country, where we see active participation of users as well. With Z5 Hypershorts platform that we will be launching soon, which is equivalent to TikTok, we'll be equipped to collaborate with real people, micro, macro influencers, and have an agile way to drive narrative around COVID-19. The last thing that I would like to talk to you about is interactive content. Interactive content is where the action is now. Digital marketers have to do more than just create compelling articles or create videos if they want to compete, right? Interactive content is the content that requires users to actively engage beyond simply watching or reading. In exchange for interacting with the content, the site visitors receive real-time value in the form of hyper-relevant information. So brands can use platforms like Hipster that allow them to create interactive content like quizzes, personality tests, interactive video polls through a simple drag and drop feature. We're doing this on Z5, and we have seen, the kind of the time on site go up, the engagement levels go up with Hipster on the platform. A service like InVideo or Lumenfy allows you to repurpose or convert your blogs, or text articles seamlessly into snackable videos. You can also use services like Byteable or Animoto to create thumb-stopping videos. So the key takeaways that I want to leave you with here is basically, reflect the reality as a brand. Content that reflects reality, treats it with sensitivity and helps people ease into the new normal by finding the good, positive perspectives on the new reality is what will help, you to make a positive, leave users with a positive effect. And you need to focus on your core values. What you do matters as much as what you say. Your content will also be defined by the stories you tell. Your content will also be defined by the stories you tell or the services you open up. Like the stories you tell, like for example, like GE, or the service you open up, like NCPA. That's what or the stand that you take as a brand. That is what will define you. You need to engage consistently with your users, engaging users with content that will get them through this difficult time. You need to entertain, distract, but consistently communicate to stay relevant. Then the live plus virtual happy hours. One of the things that is the biggest, as I said, is one of the biggest, content formats that are currently being used by brands. You need to go live, hold events that engage your audience, let them be a part of this activation and make a lasting impact. Crowdsourcing content is the next thing that you really will help you create compelling content with limited resources and restrictions in place by incentivizing users to create content for you. So interactive content is the last thing that you should definitely consider. Kickstart active engagement with users beyond simply watching or reading by using interactive content that will also give you insights. I would like to lastly leave you with this thought. In his book, The Origins of Creativity, Edward O. Wilson, he's an American biologist and naturalist. He discusses how storytelling became a unifying force for our hunter-gatherer ancestors. He cites an elder from the hunter-gatherers of the Kalahari Desert, known as the Juhonsi, which is the Bushmen, who once said, "Our old people long ago had a government, and it was an ember from the fire where we last lived, which we used to light the fire at the new place we were going." Which basically means they passed along their stories like torches that might light the way to a better future. The COVID-19 pandemic has exposed the inequalities, of our society, and we have yet to see the true extent of the virus's damage on our lives. But if we hear each other's stories and learn from the examples set by those on the front lines, maybe we'll find a way out together. At the end, we're all stories at the end. So let's just make it a good one. Thank you for this really interesting session. I think we can open it out for questions.
Thank you, Shweta. It was a really interesting walkthrough. We have a bunch of questions. So I'm just going to start shooting them out. The first one is, you mentioned um applying the basics of, the basic principles of storytelling. But now the thing is that all brands are going to use the same principles. So in that case, how does a brand stand out from the clutter? Uh, especially in times where mobility is limited. So locations, shooting, etc., is a huge challenge. How can brands stand out, especially on digital?
That's a very good question. I think that the only way that you can stand out. I see whether it is the pandemic or not. There are certain strategies that all brands use in terms of whether it is content marketing or overall strategies that they have in play. But the idea is that your strategy comes from your brand ethos, right? So what you how you stand out is completely defined by what your brand stands for. And there is no way that you can create a narrative without bringing that part of your brand. If you are a brand that stands for something that is a service oriented brand, or a, you know, you want to create, you want to basically give health related facilities, then you will take that as the core of your communication and say that this is the, here is what, how we can differentiate, this is what we are doing as a brand to make a difference. So what I'm trying to say is that while the core principles will apply to everybody, no matter what industry you're in, it is your brand ethos that will differentiate what communication route you take, or what stand you take, and how you approach the consumer.
The next question is about the jewelry sector. So Rahul Mittal has asked, how how is storytelling and content marketing relevant in something like a jewelry business?
See, storytelling and content marketing is relevant to every business, and whether you are, a retailer, you are a, like I said, whether you're a retailer, you are a, what do you say, you are in the, uh, you're in an industry that is, what do you say, OTT or any industry. The idea is that basically, if you're a jewelry retailer, you need to create stories about. You need to create content that will help you take your narrative forward. So you must have a certain very clear stand that you have taken, or a certain narrative that you already built over time. What you need to do is you need to extend that narrative during this period. You need to see how it extends itself from the point of view of, there are people, there is so much time that people have right now. You need to create, you need to do very interesting collaborations where you can get UGC content generated at this point. And for, especially for a jewelry brand, it's how people are actually staying sane, being confined in spaces right now by dressing up, or by what do you say, feeling like they are actually going to a workplace in this Zoom and Google Meet led world, is something that you can bring out through the stories that you get from them. So you should actually start a whole and create an entire narrative around asking people to generate content for you, because considering, like you said, considering the restrictions we have of shooting content, or what do you say, even kind of the budget constraints that are there, the idea is right now to actually go out and get UGC to create content for you.
Okay, so you've sort of also answered one of the other questions that came in, which was how brands can incorporate user-generated content into their storytelling and content marketing strategy. So let's.
There's no time like now to do that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because this is the time where you as a brand are restricted. You can't go out into the world and do the kind of mass big budget shoots that you would do to otherwise communicate with your audience. What you do now is you actually try and connect with the audience at the level that you understand. We understand you, we want to see you, we want to know what you're going through. We would love to see pictures of you, what do you say, going through your um, going through your day, and we'd love to see you using our products. And that's the way you actually generate this kind of content, and you disseminate it, and you also show that this, that there's a whole human story going through it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the next one is from Gaurav. He asks, how would the strategy be adopted in a B2B scenario? Stories exist there as well, but how do you convert them to a B2B2C sort of execution, since the real B2B stories are sort of boring from a B2C point of view? Essentially, how do you take content which is hardcore B2B and make it more mass palatable?
See, I will go back to the example that I spoke about. Even GE,
Hmm.
GE. is the best example in the kind of B2B communication also that they do. There is a story to tell no matter what industry you're in and no matter what communication you're doing, whether it is B2C or B2B. The
Mm, mm,
point is that to try and get what do you say, create that entire story from the perspective that if there is a certain technology that is being built, what is the value that that technology can give to your B2B partner? What is the story behind how it came into place? How did you decide on going with it? What was it that you what made you choose that technology? What made you basically build the business? Your story of building the entire business, from the get go, is something that definitely would make sense to a potential business partner. And the potential of creating content in the B2B space is as would you say integral and as possible when it comes to the B2C environment. I hope that answers your question.
okay, okay. Shweta, you also spoke about not ignoring your environment, whether it's a domestic issue or it's a global issue or it's something that's happening in another part of the world, may not have global implications, but it's still an issue. So, for example, what's happening in the States right now. But there's always a very, very thin line between that brands have to tread when they take up activism in their storytelling. So, how do you sort of maintain a balance of speaking up for a cause, but at the same time not alienating any part of your target group?
That's a very good question. This basically is it's not as easily answered.
Hmm.
One, because it
Hmm.
comes from, again, this also comes from your brand. What do you stand for? How open are you? How cheeky are you as a brand? How much of a stand have you taken across time? But in this world, actually, to be relevant and to be contextual to the user, you need to be a part of the conversation threads that are going on. You need to be part of you need to make sure that you as a brand are part of the conversations that your audience is, right?
Hmm.
So if as an audience I am it's currently there is nothing that is that happens across the world. While it may be happening in one corner in America or in Africa, we live in a very global world where we everything is merging because of the kind of communication and the kind of accessibility we have, right? So we all have opinions, we all have the and all of the things that happen across the world have implications at some point to things happening in other parts of the world. So the point is that obviously you need to take calls when it comes to what you would take up as a as in terms of which activist which topic of activism you would want to encourage or you want to endorse as a brand. But it does make a lot of difference when you actually go out and say that this is what we believe in and this is what we support. And if, for example, the case of Nike, it is not something that they would have ideally done maybe a couple of years ago. But taking this sort of a stand, it's and it's not just Nike, okay? Everybody joined in this entire Blackout Tuesday that happened, and that sort of showed that there is a whole solidarity, among brands, among people, which helps in actually bringing out, something like injustice, like racism, that is going on right now. So you as a brand obviously have to take a call whether you want to be part of the conversation, but you will these calls also define who you are as a brand and will also go on to, like I said, it'll leave an impression with your audience. So it's very important you make the right choice on also not making a choice sometimes leaves audiences thinking that you do not, what do you say, have an opinion on this, you do not want to be part of this conversation. So I would say that it is definitely imperative on you to take a stand, or if it aligns with your brand ethos.
Okay. Okay. The next question, Shweta, is on the importance of language, and I think this is more India specific.
Yeah.
So one is, of course, what what languages can brands use? I am guessing beyond Hindi and English to uh, create maximum engagement. And another question tied into the language story is, as an organization, Z also focuses on non-Hindi and English language content, whether it's the linear television arm or Z5. Um, how has it helped you, given the COVID-19 crisis? How has it helped you maintain engagement with your user base? If you can share some data along those lines.
Uh, so, languages actually has been one of our biggest strengths at Z5. And as a brand, also, I would say that taking the entire language route is the right route to take if you want to reach out to a wide audience. Basis obviously what kind of brand you are and what kind of audience you are looking at. But if you are looking at a pan India audience, it is imperative that you invest in creating communication that is language centric. We, especially from point of view of at Z5, our top languages are everything from Hindi, Marathi to Kannada to Telugu to Tamil, and beyond. But we took a stand in terms of that we will invest in languages, and that's the reason why we have content across 12 languages, and that has helped us a lot because we the audience cohorts that we have across these regions have grown across time because they have realized that we are one of the platforms that caters to all languages, and the idea of actually engaging with people across region specific becomes easier when you have the language that that is specific to the region, right? So even the examples that I took when I was talking about news, we saw a lot higher engagement when we were, sending out notification in, would you say, Gujarati to our Gujarat audience or Kannada. And what we did is basically we actually did language notification specifically for COVID, through the day. And we saw at least around 40% increase in the kind of conversion or the click-through rates that we saw on those notifications because we compared to sending it in English, right? And so I definitely think that whether it is social media communication or whether it is what do you say, overall your brand positioning, if you want to make inroads into your what do you say, uh, regional pockets, then you need to invest in communication in the languages that they are in, and you will reap dividends, because that we have seen the kind of engagement we get is manifold compared to the already evolved market, that is the English and Hindi speaking markets, right? So I would definitely say that you should invest in what do you say, languages.
Okay. Uh, uh, the next question is, can you take us through the basic steps of planning out content marketing, especially in times like these?
Yeah, I was saying that I think I just did that, but I'll just go back to the key takeaway slide here, if you can see this. The in this time, like I said, the point is that you need to, as a brand, reflect what is happening currently. You need to basically talk about, you don't need to center all your communication around COVID-19, but you need to touch upon it. You need to be part of the conversation, and you need to ease people into the new normal, right? Because the kind of currently the onion of reality that we are in, we need to users manage that, and for that, as a brand, it is very imperative that you treat communication with sensitivity and help people uh, deal with what's going on right now. That should be one major part of what you do right now. You need to go back to what is your core value, what is your brand ethos, because that will really define what you want to do as a brand. Do you want to in some way invest in helping the community? Like for example, there is a brand called Box 8 who used to only do delivery of food, right? And now it is doing groceries, essentials because of this, so and obviously like brands have to evolve in this sort of a space, right? You need to see when you see the kind of content that you need to create at this point is very defined by the stories that you also have as a brand, right? Whether it is like I said talked about GE, or whether it is if you are opening up your content like NCPA, so or the stand that you take. And the other thing is that currently there is so much content that is whether it's creators creating it, uh, and they may be YouTube influencers or they may be TikTok influencers, and there's brands creating it. You don't want to be lost in the noise. You want to create something that is of value. That said, you need to engage. People have the attention span is very short, and there's so much content. So the only way to engage with them is to consistently engage with them, right? To consistently try and give them something that will entertain them or distract them or give them something that will move them. You want to, at this point, be not seen as a brand that did not, do anything. And instead you want to be seen as a brand that actually, when they look back, they say, "Oh, this is what I was impacted by during this time." And that's why interesting and new emerging formats like lives and virtual happy hours or crowdsourcing content, through influencers, or creating interactive content becomes very important at this point.
What is the role of technology in times like these, where brands need to keep communicating, but like we mentioned, not all the tools are at our disposal as they were, let's say, before March 15th. So
Correct.
here, Shweta, what role does technology play for both brands and platforms in this case, for continuing the content marketing pipeline?
Technology is the enabler right now. It is the one that is actually letting us do the things that we can as a brand, right? And in fact, technology and product, looking, re-looking at your overall product strategy to help you get through this is what will actually enable you to evolve as a brand during this crisis. So looking at new platforms that will help you create say for example interactive content. Like we are working very closely with this Israel-based brand called Ipster that allows us to do that. Or looking at other, there are many platforms and many technologies that will help you enable you actually what do you say, create content from what you already have. You take for instance Lumenfy or Rain Video that allows you to convert your either your already text content into video formats. So these are all technologies are very important, that will help you in terms of current, because you don't have the resources right now to do this. You have to reinvent, and reinvention right now is very very important, and technology is the partner to help you do that.
One last question, Shweta. It's a slightly broad one.
Okay.
Given that our content pipelines for fiction are either choked or slowly they are starting to move, is this the time for non-fiction content to sort of shine and innovate? And because you handle news, which is a major part of non-fiction content, um, where do you see non-fiction content on streaming platforms going, given specifically the impact of COVID-19 and the lockdown on shooting for fiction content, which was essentially the bread and butter
Correct.
for linear and non-linear platforms?
Correct. This is a great non-fiction content. The kind of potential non-fiction content right now has is very 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 apparent to anyone in the OTT space, because the kind of number of content, whether it is OTT space or even in the your overall video space, the kind of content that you'll see which are built on even basic things like explainers, or how the entire what do you say, how COVID came into existence, for example, or tracing the history of viruses like Corona. It's there is a lot of possibilities to create this kind of content without, like you rightly said, without actually investing in shoots. Right? It is about actually. Building a narrative about which are very fact and based, and creating these storylines that will help actually inform people, to make them more aware, because non-fiction content is, while obviously is also as engaging, it also has a primary role of actually informing and making people aware. So there's no time like now to actually really get this going. And I would urge people who are really looking at even reinventing, what do you say, the kind of content they're putting out, to consider this as definitely one of the paths that they should take.
Thanks a lot, Shweta. We're just about running out of time. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you once again, Shweta, for the presentation and answering the questions from our audience. And thank you to the audience for chiming in and sending your questions. We'll see you guys next week with another of these webinars. Until then, stay safe.